Hey guys, BAMWX.com, meteorologist Michael Clark here. Hey, listen, I wanted to go into the long-range forecast pattern. There's so much noise and talk and chatter and different opinions and everything going on. And so I just want to show you, what we know right now, what we're seeing, and how to digest this. Listen, all of us here, we're big fans of cold, wintry patterns. And if anybody wants it, I want it just as bad as the next person does. But we have to approach this in a sensible, responsible manner, if you will. I want to show you what we're seeing, and I want to explain the risks in the pattern. All right, I'll try to do this as quickly as I possibly can. This is a look at the latest all-model ensemble for the MJO forecast. We're just looking at recent data, all really trying to hint at going somewhere into that phase 1 of the MJO. It's sloppy, it's messy, it was saying 8-1, 7-8-1, now it's skipping 8, going into 1. It's sloppy. The vertical or the 200 millibar velocity potential anomalies, which kind of helps us see where the tropical convection, the energy is really starting to kind of hone in on MJO phase 1. What does that look like with the current atmospheric setup? Well, the 500 millibar pattern is the analog across the top, the forecast across the bottom. It's a very close match, with the exception of some Greenland blocking not really matching up, and some blocking on the other side of the hemisphere as well, kind of not being totally matched. North American pattern shows up for the most part. I'll move the video over here. This is the analog on the top right. December positive global wind pattern, positive angular momentum with an MJO phase 1 and an El Nino, if you will, and the forecast valid on December 28th. Okay, and so you can kind of see that where some colder than normal air can be possible across the south and up across the north and east. No question about it. Again, this is the 500 millibar plot from an all-model European, Canadian, American ensemble for the day 15 forecast. And again, you can see valid on the 28th. This change tries to take place sometime around the 26th, 27th, 28th. Again, but this is not the best winter pattern look we've ever seen. I want to make sure you understand we're not forecasting major cold and snowstorms. We are forecasting a pattern that might become more conducive for some winter storms and some colder temperatures in some of the higher demand areas across the south and the east and northeast. No question. But we're not talking about the best pattern setup we've ever seen. This is the forecasted temperature departure from normal on day 15. Again, from an all-model ensemble, all of the ensembles blended together here. And again, the big problem or the big question is going to be the source region of cold. Where's the polar vortex at, and are we going to be able to tap into the coldest air on the planet to bring it down here? And at first, the answer really might be yes and no. I mean, it's kind of complicated. We look at all the clusters for the day 15 time frame. We break down different ensemble possible outcomes, and again, most of them hinting at this colder look. Right? You can see the day 15 500 millibar height anomalies. Interesting look here from a couple of the clusters closer to that MJO phase 1. Analog. It's closer. It's not a match, but there's some indication there from that the models are really honing in on the MJO phase 1. The question becomes the source region of the cold. I've got the American and the Canadian ensemble for the 10 millibar geopotential heights forecast. Where is the core of the polar vortex at day 15? This is the problem, and this is why this is not going to be an Arctic outbreak. It's going to be colder than average for some folks, but not an Arctic outbreak. And this can really limit the potential for big winter storms. The Arctic oscillation is not going to be negative at this time. In fact, it may not turn negative. That Arctic oscillation may not get to that until closer to mid-January. Once that happens, the pattern could become conducive into that second week of January for the vortex to get totally kind of displaced. I don't want to say it's a total breakdown of the vortex. It's not, but a warming event over the epicenter of the North Pole may displace the vortex into other continents or other regions, if you will. Okay, this is a look at the GEFS forecast. Now, it is forecasting a weaker vortex. All right, no question about it. Into that first week of January, it's a weaker vortex It's not a bona fide sudden stratospheric warming event. In fact, the model has went from a 50% probability down to a 29% probability of that happening. The European Weekly, again, it's disrupting it, it's protruding it, it's punching, it's jabbing, it's bothering it. It's not a total breakdown, but there are several members that do try to hint at that into that second week of January. When you look at this, the second week of January, what's happened is the European Weekly, along with the American Weekly, really dislodges and displaces the vortex away from the pole and kind of spreads it out, all right? I don't want to say it's a total breakdown of the polar vortex because I don't believe that it is, but it dislodges colder air and potentially sets up for a classic negative Arctic oscillation, negative AO, during a strong El Nino event, which can become eventful and cold into January. The first signs of this possibly happening, again, are in late December. All right, I want to show you this here. This is an animation of the GEFS Weekly. Watch where the vortex starts, okay? Eastern U.S., watch where it migrates to up into the other side of the pole. And then what happens is that 10 millibar warming event that you see here really displaces it. And again, that's why I think closer into that second week of January, we're in more of a favorable spot for a negative Arctic oscillation and a colder pattern that can become stormier. Really, a lot of this hinges on the phase 7 of the MJO, where the models try to come through. It's kind of, you can't really see it too well here. Briefly, the phase 7 MJO supports warming and breakdowns of the vortex. It could be precursors to that. That's where a lot of this might come from. So, long story short, the pattern in the North Pacific and in Eastern Asia starting to migrate towards what would support a colder and stormier January forecast. It's not out of the question. It's something we are watching. I think the change again can start to take place sometime just after Christmas. The question's going to be for, New Year's or Christmas or New Year's big snowstorms, big East Coast snowstorms. Those aren't off the table, but we have to remember we don't have a great tap into the true source of the coldest air in the Northern Hemisphere, which is the polar vortex. That can create issues for getting bona fide winter storms, this lack of the high latitude blocking. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying that's what can be the wrench in this. And that is the wrench for the supply of bitterly cold Arctic air in the forecast, at least in the next few weeks. So we see it. We see what's happening. We see the migration. We see where the pattern's trying to go. It is encouraging, but there are risks, and the risks are all hinged on where does the polar vortex go. Remember, guys, that our cold air comes from there. So where the core of that vortex is, it matters. And that's not a popular message. A lot of folks don't talk about that, and I think there's a lack of understanding there. So we really have to figure out, what's this going to do? Where is it going to send the Arctic air? And that's the forecast challenges coming up. If you are interested in tracking along with us on this on a daily basis, head over to bmwx.com. Sign up for our long-range outlooks. We update them all the time, and we try to be pretty objective to them without a bias. That's our goal here. So if you have questions, tweet us. Check out the video on YouTube. We'll talk to you soon.